Hello, this is Reverend Dore, teaching the science of mind, philosophy, faith, and way of life from Sarasota, Florida. Sometimes people ask me, what is science of mind? We're very God-centered. We believe God is all there is, and we're really a synthesis of science, religion, psychology, and good old common sense, I guess. We're a very common sense idea. We're not flighty or new agey at all. As a matter of fact, we believe in self-responsibility. We believe that thoughts are things and that you create your own reality. We believe that God is all there is and we are created by the mind of God, as is everything else. We believe that you can heal yourself when you learn how. You can heal others. You can create any condition you want in your life once you learn how. And that's what I'm here for, is to teach you that skill. Today, we want to talk about making it real. You know, it's one thing to have a great idea, but it's another to get it into form where you can use it, where it's in your bank account and you can spend it, or where you can drive it if you want a new car, or that new job you want, so you actually go to work and start earning money. You know, ideas are great. I know many people who circle the field constantly but never land the airplane. Neville Goddard, another great metaphysician he taught something very similar to science of mind, he used to say that most people live their lives in constant construction and delayed occupancy. And I thought that was a great line. We're building, and we never move in. We can never get it done. So this is all about making it real. You know, a lot of people love the flights of fancy and all the little pink clouds of love of metaphysics. I do too. But there comes a time when you've got to buy groceries, pay rent, get married, have kids if you want to, go to work every day, get in a car and go to the store. You got to live. You got to chop wood and carry water, as they say in the East. Even the Buddha had to do that. And so this is all about making it real. How do we create the world around us? You know, a writer takes his inspiration wherever he can find it, whatever hits you. And even if the source is Star Trek Deep Space Nine, this is true. This very well-written and often metaphysical series had a wildly successful 7-year run. I'm sure you remember it. In many ways, it portrayed the darker side of the Star Trek saga. The lead role of Captain Sisko was played by the really fine film and stage actor Avery Brooks. And he's a 24th century Starfleet officer of African-American descent at a time when humans were way beyond noticing ethnicity. I don't even think they knew somebody had darker skin than somebody else, but they could have cared less. You know, I was taking a break after completing the latest post to this site and tuned into a 1998 episode of Deep Space Nine entitled Far Beyond the Stars. I expected a pleasant time journeying 300 years into the future and having some interesting adventures with Sisko, Kira, Bashir, Warp, Dax, Quark, and all the other great characters. I love Quark. He is too cool. It reminds me of some friends I had in college. Sisko passes out just all of a sudden and enters a time singularity and finds himself in 1953 New York City. Now, he's working as a science fiction writer for Galaxy magazine. Interestingly enough, there really was a Galaxy magazine. There might still be, for all I know. I used to love to read sci-fi magazines when I was a kid. I've always liked sci-fi. He is one of their most popular writers. His name is Benny Brooks back in 1953. And things go well until the publisher wants to put a photograph of each writer in front of the magazine. Well, this is a real problem for Benny's character because Benny's black. He's African American in this 1953 reality, too. The editor is afraid that in 1950s America, the public just isn't ready for a black sci-fi writer. And on top of that, he's not going to put the photograph in there. Now, Benny is not happy one single bit. He almost feels like quitting, but he decides to stick it out because he's doing really well and making really good money for 1953 writing these articles. So he swallows his pride and goes ahead. Now, this is all bad enough, but then Benny writes a story about a space station 300 years in the future with an African-American commander named Benjamin Sisko. He makes up Cardassians, Bajorans, the Dominion, Ferengi, the whole cast of characters of the Deep Space Nine we know and love today. You know, his muses just won't let go, and he keeps writing 6 stories in all about this space station and Captain Sisko. It's what we would call today a novella. And the editor is thrilled with the stories, and he said that if the public won't accept a black sci-fi writer, they sure won't like a black commander of the largest space station in the Federation. In other words, he loves the stories, but he can't publish them that way. So he works out what he thinks is a good compromise. He tells Benny Brooks to make the story into a dream sequence so that the main character is white. That way it'll be okay. But just dreaming of Sisko. Benny is really upset about this, but he reluctantly agrees. But then, after everything's all set to publish, the publisher of the magazine kills all 6 of his stories and fires Benny because he's afraid of the racial backlash. He's already had some phone calls from other people in the publishing industry, and he's afraid of getting in trouble. Can't have black heroes in 1953 except baseball. Now, Willie Mays is featured in this episode. Kind of interesting episode for that reason. Benny has just been beaten up by NYPD's finest for being in the wrong part of town at the wrong time. And he's beaten up really badly, too. And he loses it. He just loses it. He's had enough. Sisko and Deep Space Nine are no longer stories to him. They're real. They exist in a future that has not yet happened, but he knows they're real. He cries out in anguish, "You don't understand. It's real. This will happen. It's real, not just a story. You've got to print it because it's real." The idea is if he doesn't print it, it may never happen. And there's things that need to happen in the future. Well, Captain Sisko comes to in the infirmary of Deep Space Nine. He comes out of his 1953 visit still muttering that it's real, I know it. He's okay, but what he has seen and learned is that fictional time trips nearly always precede what we call reality. There's always a thought before the thing. The thought put in mind almost always comes to pass in some form or another. The details may change, but what is put into consciousness appears in form at some point in time. Far Beyond the Stars is a great episode with great acting and even better writing. And if you want to catch it, or any of the Star Trek, get yourself a subscription to Netflix. $8 a month, it's the best bargain you could ever have, believe me. And you can watch thousands of things on there, movies, TV, documentaries, all of the Star Treks, every one, every series is on there, every season. You can just have a Star Trek marathon like you've never seen if you want to. Anyway, Far Beyond the Stars is great acting and even better writing, though it does serve as a graphic reminder of just how far the U.S. has come in our collective consciousness of race, gender, and now sexual orientation in just 60 years. You know, it seems a miracle that in my lifetime, and I'm 67, in my lifetime, this country has done a total 180. When I was born, blacks and whites couldn't even fight together in the same unit in World War II. The services weren't integrated till 1947. Blacks weren't even good enough to fight alongside of in the minds of white America. Now, in Los Angeles, where my children grow up, interracial marriage is the norm, not just blacks and whites, but every combination you could imagine. In fact, they're an example of that because my children's mother is Belizean, so they're half black and they're half white, and they're 21st century children. What is written and spoken does happen. And we changed our mind about race because of the words spoken by Martin Luther King. The British Empire fell because of the words of Mahatma Gandhi and the force and the emotion and the belief behind them and the actions he took and King took. And right now we're seeing a huge change. In just 15 years, sexual orientation has gone from most people weren't in favor of gay rights to almost everybody is, particularly the young. Gay marriage is being legalized all over the U.S., one state at a time. And you'll see that come to pass in full fruition very soon. All because the idea got in mind and traveled from one mind to the other, and people said, well, heck, if we can marry, let them marry. Why not? What the heck? These things are not just flight of fancy. They're real. They're real. The huge idea here is that our thoughts are creative. They are not just idle flights of fancy like my father used to say. When given emotional force and belief, you've got to have some emotion behind it, and you've got to really believe it. Thoughts literally build your reality. Here's two graphic examples of this metaphysical principle that we all know about. In 1868, Jules Verne wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Now, we've seen the movie, and a lot of us have read the book. If you haven't read the book, read the book. It's better than the movie. It's the story of a huge undersea ship powered by the same energy that powers the sun. In other words, it's a nuclear-powered submarine, and these are commonplace today. Virtually all submarines are nuclear-powered. And many of our surface ships as well. We generate a lot of our power with nuclear energy, which I think, if properly regulated, is perfectly safe. Properly regulated being the key word. 10 years later, Jules Verne wrote Journey to the Moon. And in 1969, the U.S. space program did just that. They did it almost in the same way. They were in a capsule, and they were shot into space by a rocket ship. Jules Verne had them shot out of a huge, miles-long cannon because he didn't know rockets hadn't been invented yet. In 1909, a British novel, now very little read. In fact, it's not easy to find. I did find a copy in the library here, downtown library here in Sarasota. Became a bestseller. The novel's title was Leviathan, and it told the story of the world's largest ocean liner, believed unsinkable, which on its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York struck an iceberg and sank in just over an hour with a huge loss of life. Just 3 years later, the White Star liner Titanic, which fit the description of the Leviathan to a T, did exactly the same thing, even sailing the same route and ignoring the iceberg warnings, as did the captain of the fictional Leviathan. Now, in 1909, the Titanic was on the drawing boards, but the keel had not even been laid yet. So it's not like they knew there was going to be a ship like the Leviathan. This was fiction. Did the novel cause the great tragedy of the Titanic sinking? No, but it could have served as a warning for the builders and owners of the real Titanic to take proper precautions, such as full watertight compartments instead of going only part way up, and enough lifeboats for every passenger and crew member. Do you know the Titanic only had 12 lifeboats and yet carried 3,000 passengers and crew? That was a disaster waiting to happen. But sadly, the novel was scoffed at as pure fantasy and sensationalism. And how often does that happen today? Not every work of fiction comes to pass in our time, but I wonder how many are yet to become reality in the distant future. If I were you, I would be careful what you write, speak, and think. I am. I don't write anything I don't want to come true. You have the power to create a piece of the future of the universe. And if enough of your brothers and sisters on earth join you in this vision, it will surely come to pass. You know, when an idea hits critical mass, which is about 33% of the population, there's no stopping it. Because there's a large chunk that don't care and will go along, and the small opposition will be overwhelmed by the ones that do care. Every marketing person knows this. There really is no fiction, you know, just fact that isn't cooked yet. I want to repeat that. There is no fiction. There's just fact that isn't out of the oven yet. Watch what you're thinking and speaking. You are birthing your reality, or the reality of perhaps your own great-great-grandchildren. Thoughts are things, and they are the most creative power in the universe. The whole universe is made up of thoughts. What is the universe but a vast field of consciousness become form and substance? God thinks you into existence. God thinks everything that exists into existence. And you think your life into existence. Think and speak well, my friends, and live long and prosper until we're together again. This is Reverend Dore Jacques Patlian saying, bye-bye for now.